Hello and welcome to the Serious Games Lab unboxing series. Today we have a new game we want to show you and unbox with you. I am your host, Lazar Šljukić, and with me today, as usual, Milan Varda. Milan, what do we have today with us?
So today we have a game that we'll seriously unbox. So we have a Horizons game. It's a game made by David Banks by using the expertise from King's College and even further beyond. It's a game that was actually made for NATO. Its purpose is to simulate potential futures. So it's essentially a strategic foresight game, grand strategic foresight game, that simulates potential futures that NATO, EU, US, Russia, and China might have to face.
Okay, that sounds pretty interesting. I'd say I can't wait to see what it looks like, but you and I already saw what it looks
Yes.
like, so I'll let you do the honors, please.
Thank you.
All right. So first thing first, we have a deck of cards. Milan, tell us, what does this deck of cards represent?
All right, so we have different types of cards here. We have many technology cards. We have numerous climate events, they're the next, and political events. Now, what's going on? We have many players, many players, and each player has their own actions that they'll conduct. But not everything is up to the players, like in real life. Events happen and you cannot control them really. So, for example, political event might be terrorist attack in Europe.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible event that can happen, right?
Yeah.
And it's usually outside of the government's capability to deal with it. Investments can be successful, for example. So somebody that has most investments in Africa might gain extra income from that. Then there are many technological things going on, right? Because you can actually use these in order to modify your own conventional warfare, for example, capabilities, or say counterinsurgency capabilities. But just as important, and arguably the most important things that are very much, but not fully, outside of government scopes, are climate events. Now, there are three different types of climate events. There are level 1, level 2, and level 3 climate events. Now, we live in a times that are fairly affected by climate change, not fully. So we have many issues like droughts, like famines. But if we don't do anything about climate change in 20, 30, 40 years from now, it's going to be more and more extreme. So much so that it's going to significantly, like, for example, we can have Indian drought, right? But we can also have 50 degrees in the Middle East, mass famines, or mega typhoons. And the more the severe the climate change is, the more severe those consequences will be for the players. So at one point, like, the game looks long into the future. Unlike, say, Hegemony, which looks a couple of years into the future, this looks decades into the future. That's the purpose of the game. So climate events can become very much extreme, so much so that the game becomes barely playable for every player. I think that it happened in your session.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to talk about. Actually,
Yeah.
we already talked that we had a chance to play this game. We facilitated one, so that was one of my favorite features in the game, the climate change thing. Because in our game, it gone so far that we couldn't even make any actions at all.
Yeah.
It kind of ruined our game because we all tried to. We basically didn't pay attention to it. So I think the next thing we should show is how the map looks. That's maybe the most interesting part of this game, if you ask me. Maybe we should we should like this, so they can see. So basically we have Europe here in the middle, and then we have other regions represented like this. But where's USA here? Is it?
Well, it's
here, right?
Is that it's here?
Yeah. I see it now. Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a bit difficult upside down.
Yeah, and they're like those little circles with swords and network thing and some research thing. Maybe you can talk something about that.
So first of all, we have years. So remember, Hegemony, you have turns, each turn representing a year. Here, each turn represents a couple of years. Yeah. So it goes into 2045, basically, and it could be extended further. Now, the idea behind this was that NATO wanted to see what kind of challenges it's going to face in over 20 years. And this game provides a weak prediction capability, but good scenario testing for those scenarios. Now, each map has multiple types of resources that players need to have some degree of control of. Now, players can also make military bases there. The most interesting thing about this is actually Arctic, in my opinion, because Arctic, as you can see, there are circles here. So this most outside circle is the one that you can access. Like you can utilize Alaska, for example, right? But you cannot really use many of these resources that are
It's
inside.
also a mainstream issue. Like
Yeah.
this will probably be most contested in the.
Oh yeah, very
Research,
psychologically
yeah.
important for one
Yeah.
leader, especially the Greenland part.
Yeah.
Like this island here, and there are many resources there, but they're under the ice.
Yeah.
So with climate change, the game becomes much harder to play in general because the resources as a whole are more scarce. It's much harder to produce food. It affects the entire world. But the good side for it, especially for players like Russia and to lesser degree USA, is that they can access some of these resources again.
Yeah.
So essentially, during most of the game, they will access from a bunch of resources, but they can also sometimes use tools like blocking the resources from others and things like that. There are also many other trackers here. So Unity stability one is very.
Before we get to trackers, can you maybe just touch upon each player and their respective goals in the game, if you remember, because
yeah, so I remember some of them. So they don't have clear, at least when we played the game in late 2024, they didn't have any clear victory conditions. They had pretty much not lose conditions. So their goals were just to avoid fears. So for NATO, it's just to avoid massive disunity. For US, it's to avoid massive disunity, but also like it's contingent upon who the leader of US is. So if they have populist president like they do now, they don't care that much about Europe. If they don't, they care much about Europe. Like they fear Chinese dominance in the Pacific region. Then China obviously fears complete isolation or blocking from other players. Russia also fears losing its stability, and that's why we have both stability and unity. Because when you think about EU or NATO, specifically NATO, all of it is about unity because you need to be as united as possible to act. And when you think about states, countries, it's about stability.
and also unlike in the other games we played, NATO and EU were actually represented as different players
Yeah.
in this game, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly. And also there was USA, there was Russia, and there was China, and that's all, right?
Yeah. So we don't have Iran and North Korea here. We just have these 5 players.
Yeah, and also there are a lot of, as you wanted to say before, a lot of indicators here. We talked about climate indicators briefly, but can you maybe tell us about other?
Yeah, so we have climate. It's this one here that we can track, and obviously the more severe it is, the bigger the bigger heating obviously is, and then more severe cards will be drawn, and impact for resources. Is
in
much
our
higher.
game, it was actually
Oh, wow.
about here.
Yeah,
It was very catastrophic.
Yeah, that's I think we got about here. It wasn't that much because they invested it.
Yeah, that was really bad.
So we have global populism, which is a major metric, and it's affected by how much populism there is in each actor. So obviously events shape that as well, not just decisions of players. And populism is affecting negatively EU and NATO severely. It's not affecting US as much, but it's affecting its foreign policy. And Russia is somewhat immune to populism, but it's also being affected by it in a different manner. If I remember correctly, like if its stability is low, I think that it's being affected, but I don't remember all the details. Now, obviously, tech levels we have, right? Because each player can increase its tech level. And what we also have is global governance. So players can form global governance mechanisms, right? They can form regimes. And those regimes are kind of like in theory, they can weaken the effects of anarchy. So that can lead to more cooperation in the world, higher resources, higher absolute gains in general.
Also, as you said, there are no clear win conditions, but there also have to be some way for you to track your progress, and that's represented with strategic advantage, right?
Yes.
Can you maybe explain to us how it's calculated? How do you gain points? How do you lose points?
Yeah, so it depends on your fears and opposite of fears. So basically, like opening military bases, gaining more resources is going to give you strategic advantage. Being blocked in some way is going to give you strategic disadvantage. Losing your stability or unity will do the same. So essentially, it's a way to track how much high somebody has gotten compared to their very first turn. So it shows how good somebody's playing, but in general, they're just conditions that are explicit conditions that are fears that nations fear.
Get it. We also have those little chips, as I assume and as I remember. These were used to represent different players, right?
Yes.
If I remember correctly, red one was Russia, right? or
I
maybe
think
yellow
so,
one
yeah.
was
So we
Russia.
have bases also and
Yeah, I
and
think
armies.
yeah, there's a lot of different
Shapes.
shapes
Yeah,
here.
tanks are armies.
There's tank, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have tanks. We
And
have
we have-
those
yeah.
little circles. We have boxes.
Yeah, boxes were bases, I think.
Yeah, I
And
think
these were, I think, trackers.
something. Yeah, the trackers were used for strategic advantage.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
they're basically put here, and you can track.
Yeah, and
each
also
turn.
who controls each resource, I
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
Yeah, we also
But,
use it like that. There were also these ones. You can just put them all here. So maybe camera can see it later on. And if I remember correctly, those were all the shapes used.
Yes.
And also there were pair of dice. Yeah. Unlike the last game we played and we talked about, we're not using D10.
No.
We're using two D6s. So what's the difference? Why D6 this time?
So I think that there are a few reasons. Like it's not going exactly as percentages of the 100, but more like out of the 6 or out of the 12. So it's just a different way of using things. Also, people are just more familiar with this shape. Like everybody's familiar with this. Well, D10 is something that's less commonly used for.
Also, unlike the last game we played, if I remember correctly, in Horizons, the game had a huge rule book that we were following all throughout the game.
Yeah.
The game master was basically reading out the events as they were happening. So why that difference? Why is that happening? And there weren't many chances for players to express their individuality and freedom, I guess. So why that difference and what does it bring?
Correct. So it's a fully rigid game, unlike Hegemony, where we did have some free play turns, and that makes it far easier to facilitate. Like twice or 3 times easier to facilitate for facilitator. One person can do it. It's recommended to have 2 people. But Hegemony 2 is the bare minimum, and it's very difficult. You need 4 people or 5. So it's much easier to facilitate, and it's kind of as if you had algorithm going on. So there are things happening like, okay, at this point we're just drawing events, then you have a move, then you have a move, then we're drawing some events again, then we're agitating things, calculating things. And it's super rigid game, which makes it so there are some disadvantages and advantages. So it's much easier to run, as I said, facilitate. It's quicker to play, much quicker, because it's rigid, that's in structure. It's also much more replicable. So with free play, you might see some out-of-the-box things going on, which is a good thing because you can obviously see some angles that you haven't thought of already, and that's kind of has an advantage with strategic foresight. But replaying game many times, and they replayed it, I believe, almost 20 times by the time we got to play it. They see how it turns out every time, they see how it changes every time, and then they can see what are more likely outcomes to happen. So, when you run something like it's big number game, if I throw dice, the odds of me getting a 6 are low, right? But if I throw it, say, 600 times, roughly I'll get 100 times of each set.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's just a way to make a bit stronger prediction, a bit better predictability of what might happen. And also maybe to draw some theoretical insights from it. If you see some tendency, if under certain conditions something is almost always happening, which we haven't thought about earlier, can be good for generalization in the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. So now that begs the question, which one do you think is better used as an academic tool or as a teaching tool? So you had your experience as a player, you had your experience as a facilitator. Which one would you, we talked about Horizons, we talked about Hegemony. Do you think maybe Horizons would be better used for teaching than Hegemony? Or what do you think?
That's a good question. I think that it's easier, so it takes less resources to teach Horizons, that's for sure, compared to Hegemony. And it's much more comprehensive, so it's going to teach you more about global governance, more about climate change, more about other non-realist aspects, which are completely absent from Hegemony. But also it's not going to get you as prepared for feeling like a person playing Hegemony, so you're not going to feel as much as your country or as much as your intelligent advisor, and it's not going to increase your creativity by much, which Hegemony will make you, like it will work for lateral thinking and things like that. So it's I think that it's less resource intensive, so it depends what you want to teach. If you're going for some hardcore realist course, I would definitely go with Hegemony. But if you're conducting some course that takes into account liberal theories or constructive theories, Horizons is probably better.
Okay, well now you will have a chance to use both.
Yeah.
If you want to maybe tell us something about if you will have a chance to use this one as a teaching mechanism somewhere?
We will have a chance to use this one, so we will be using it this July actually at S Island. So we're making a summer school there with our students from International Masters in Intelligence, Security, and Strategic Studies, IMSIS basically. It's a long name. So our Erasmus Mundus students, master students will come there. Also, it's doctoral. I mean, it's open for doctoral students and other master students. So we'll have more applications from MA, PhD level students, and we will also have our partners from the ECHO working on this, and also our partners from Ohio State University coming to aid us.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. I know I'll be there for sure.
Yeah.
So if you want to join in, we'll leave all the info down below, and that would be all. Thank you.
Yeah.